G503. I'm Scott Schiller, your host, and you probably can't hear me because I'm wearing this fantastic Jeep mask that was sent to me by Eric Kalamaya himself. I believe his sister makes these. This is one of the coolest things in the world. Some of you may like the fact that you can't hear me and I can't talk, but a lot of you might want to hear me, so let's see if you can't take this thing off. All right. Hope everybody's doing well. In my hand, I have a bag, and it's full of trailer socket parts. And I thought I was going to be slick and make you a video showing you how to disassemble one of these and put it back together. And I made a very, very bad mistake. And I decided that I was going to take a wooden dowel and I was going to put it in there and drive out the bakelite insert that went in there. If you notice it's not in there anymore, that's because I shattered it. I did send footage to the boss because I felt kind of bad. And this was his response to me.
No. Dude, I told you.
Anyways, he was kind enough to send me another, let's say backside, because I already had the cover and that was a wonderful thing. And I also got the retaining ring and dust shield from Ron also. A little dust shield, that's pretty cool. In this video, I'm going to show you how to reassemble, because I did take one apart and I got some pictures of that, but I wasn't about to make a fool of myself and destroy the insert. If you're going to do that, please, the insert is very, very delicate, especially being as old they are, and it will shatter into a bazillion pieces. All right, let's get started with the video. I think you're going to like this one. It's a little lengthy, but there's a lot of information in this, and I think it's going to be very helpful to a lot of you. Let's start out here by taking a look at some of the pictures that I took as I disassembled the unit itself. You can see that it's probably been sandblasted or bead blasted at some point and then set up on the shelf, but the original wiring and all the hardware was intact. So I just disassembled it, and to save time in the video, the disassembly process will be the exact opposite as the assembly process that I'm going to show you. Just took all the hardware apart, made sure I didn't lose any of it, and I cleaned it up with some brushes and some wire wheels, and the copper was in good shape, and that cleaned up really, really nice, as you'll see later in the video. I masked everything off, and I did not remove the bakelite insert. Ask me why. That tends to shatter if you remove it 9 times out of 10. But there's everything primed and painted up and ready to go. Everything laid out here on the table, ready to go. And I'll show you the parts. There's 4 what I will call hoods, and they're made out of copper or protectors. Then you've got your copper blades, which have a special bolt that they use in the inside. And notice that that copper washer is a little wider than a normal washer would be. And also the copper nut or brass nut there. You've got 4 of these smaller nuts. They're all the same size. You've got these 2 in the back that will fit the center post, that one's wider than the other. You've got your star washers and your 4 copper washers. Here's the fiber disc. I cleaned that up with alcohol. That came out pretty well. We've got this cap here that's all painted up and ready to go. This is the housing with the bakelite or plastic insert. There's the cover, and that is the ring that retains the dust cover on the back side of the Jeep. I'm going to start with my fiber disc here, and notice that one hole here is larger than the other 3, and that's going to go on the pronounced area there where the bakelite comes through the back side of the housing. It slips on just like that, and that way when your studs come through the back side or your post, they'll be oriented in the correct way for your plug to match up to its proper connections. I also made myself a little mark because I didn't know about that one sticking out at first before I took it off, and that was a smart idea too, just in case. Just little things like that will help you out in the future. Let's take one of our copper blades here, and we'll take the nut off the top. And you notice that washer again. It's just a little bit oversized what a normal washer, in my opinion, would be. Just go ahead and take this nut off, and these are oriented a certain way inside the housing. You can leave the nut on for the time being, but I want to point out to you on the blade here, this little hook, because that hook slides inside and catches on the inside of the insert there to hold the blade in place. And you just put the bolt back through the backside like that, and then hook your blade in, and you'll know it's secure because you won't be able to pull it in or out like this back and forth, so it's set in there. And then we'll flip it back over, and then we'll install the washer, and keep your finger on there because it will fall back out if you don't. We'll put the copper washer on, and then we'll install a nut on that stud right there. Just go ahead and put it on finger tight. It'll go on there pretty easily. As I get down towards the bottom here, I'd like to use the wrenches. My fingers just can't get in there like they used to anymore as they're getting a little old and tired, I would suppose. So just take a wrench, and I'm not going to fully tighten this and pull it all the way down. I'm just going to snug it up because I want to have the other ones installed first before I tighten them all down. The other 3 posts go in the same way as the first one. Just make sure that you've got that little hook or clip inside. And when we finish all 4 of them, we can turn this over and continue. Take a look here at this center post, and that's what holds your insert in, or the bolt it does, and it's actually integrated into the actual insert, so if you knock on that, you will break it. I've got a star washer here in my hand, and then I've got a copper flat washer, and then I've got just a standard steel washer. And the reason I want to show you all three of these is because in all the pictures I looked at on the web before I made this video, I saw different variations of all these. When I took this apart, mine didn't have any. I'm going to go with the star washer because I feel that would be the best way to keep that nut from backing off, and I don't think it will hurt the fiber insert there. Now you've got these two nuts, and you'll notice one is thicker than the other. You want to use the thinner one on the actual post that holds that insert into the housing. Just going to spin this down with my fingers, and then I'll tighten it up with a wrench. I'm not going to go too tight. As I said, that is actually integrated into the insert, and I don't want to take a chance of snapping it. Now that I'm done snugging up the center one there, I'm going to go to the outside bolts because they're not fully tightened yet, and I'm just going to give them a little snugging on the outsides, and I'm going to do it in a cross pattern, so back and forth on each side to just kind of draw even pressure down on that fiber disc. I probably don't need to do this, but I've just learned in the past if you wrench on one side too hard, you stand a chance of breaking stuff. We're all set to go here. It looks real good. So let's move on to the fasteners. Now, the actual post there, that's where your terminal from your wire would go on. After the terminal goes on, you would use a star washer. After the star washer goes on, we'll go ahead and we'll put a copper flat washer on top of the star washer, and then your shield or your cover or protector, or grommet as some people I've heard call it, goes on the top of that, and that organizes all your wires. We'll install all those in the future. And here's something interesting also. There's actually two nuts that go on the top of those to make sure that you can back one of the nuts and tighten against each other so that terminal will not come loose. In the very near future, I will be doing a wiring harness video in the Team G503 video series, and I'll show you how to hook all the wires up after this unit is installed on the actual Jeep. Here we go again. I'm going to put the two nuts down. I'm just going to finger tighten them from now because I know they're going to come off, and each other one of those posts is done the same way with the rest of the hardware. We've got everything installed now, and everything looks clean and nice. It's going to make for some really good connections when we install the wiring harness. The next part of this assembly is we're going to put the cap on the back side. If you turn the unit around, you're going to notice at the top of the unit it says Warner, and on the bottom it's marked part number 3529. You can also see that in the insert there's a little groove, and that's to let any moisture out of the socket that perhaps would get in there. Mounted on the Jeep would be the same way, and our blades would be at 10, 2, 4, and 6 as a reference. We'll turn that around with the Warner facing up, and then I'm going to take the cap, and notice there's two cutouts on the bottom and one large on the top. I'm going to orient that cap so the two larger, the large single cutout is facing towards the top of the unit. We'll install the star washer, and then this is the thicker of the two nuts that I showed you in the beginning when we laid out all the parts. I'm just going to go ahead and finger tight this on and give it a couple turns with the wrench because that cover will have to come off when we wire the Jeep. We're almost ready now to go out back and install it onto the Jeep, but I want to show you a couple of their parts first. This is the dust shield retainer and seal kit from Ron Fitzpatrick Jeep Parts. It's part number A65889. As you see here, my old seal's quite beat up and it's ripped and tore, and this is a perfect replacement with some quality rubber that we can use. I also got myself a set of 4 bolts. There's 2 of them. They're 1/4 inch by 1 inch, and then I've got some that are 1/4 inch by 3/4 inches with lock washers. And then you also have to have the star washers. This is very important. I'll show you outside why later. And you also need the nuts that go to those bolts. Let's go ahead and gather everything up and head out in the backyard and install this onto the 43 Willys. Before we get started here, I'll give you the hole measurements. Pulling from the bottom of the tub, the holes are both 6 and 7/16 and 8 and 15/16 from the bottom. And then if you pull from that seam, the distances are 1 and 5/16 and 3 and 9/16 to both of those. If you need the large center hole, you would draw a diagonal X perfectly in the center of those holes, and right in the center of that where the X meets, you would drill yourself a 2 and 7/8 inch holes. Here's a diagram that came with the reflector kit that I've gotten for the tail lights there. It's pretty interesting, and just keep it every now and again for references because a lot of times those holes are not there. All right, out comes the Dremel tool and the wire brush, because what I've got to do here you're probably not going to like if you've painted everything all up nice. I guess that wouldn't be a problem either because you could always touch it back up. What we're going to do is, because the unit itself is grounded to the actual tub, you're going to have to clean the paint off from the bolt holes in all the locations. Now the manual says that you need to do the top 2, but just to be safe, I'm going to go ahead and do all 4, front, back, and inside. So just go ahead and carefully here with the Dremel tool, I'm going to clean off all the paint and the primer until I'm down to about 1/8 of an inch of bare steel all the way around the holes for inserting the bolts. The Dremel tool with the wire wheel makes it really easy, and it's easy to control, and you're not jumping all over the place. However, if you're using any sort of grinder, wire wheel, or disc, make sure you're wearing the proper safety equipment, because these things do have a tendency to throw shards, and for some strange reason like to end up in the strangest places, including your eyes. After I get this all cleaned up, I'll wipe down the dust, and then we'll move on to the next part. Now this next part here made me cringe a little bit, because I just got done painting up my fine ring here. What I did was I took this utility knife and I scraped out the paint on the inside of where the bolt holes would go through. And on one side, or the face, I'm going to have to remove all the paint. The back side of that ring will actually touch against the rubber, so it actually won't insulate. But when the bolt head goes in like that, nice and clean, that's what's going to make your ground when you fasten it from the back side. So you do have to clean the paint off the face side of the retainer ring. The next step is to take the cover here with the spring, and we're going to clean the paint off both sides as well as the inside there with the Dremel tool, because also that is going to be part of our grounding system. I'm probably overdoing this. I've read the manual. It does tell you how to install this, and it definitely says to use star washers on the backside. It's just an experience. I feel like if you have an opportunity to make a good ground, an electrical connection, or a component, then you should take the extra steps, because the grounds are what really going to cause you the problem in the future. I'm going to clean the paint off both the front side and the back side of the unit. And I've actually seen this installed with the dust shields on the inside. That's wrong. Those contact points have got to be clean, and those are what mates up to the back side of your tub or your metal panel and gives you the ground. We'll clean these areas off also with the wire wheel, and we'll be ready to go. Once you get everything all cleaned up and you've got some nice metal contacts, give it a last wipe down so there's no dust or anything that's going to impede you from installing this. The first step we'll do is to take our cover, and we'll take the inch-long bolts. So I've also ran these on a wire wheel just so they were clean and there was no oil or grease on them, so I know they're going to make a good ground contact. As you see here, they're all nice and clean and shiny. So we'll insert the inch-long bolts into the cover where the spring's at there, and that is oriented like that, so the actual longer tongue of that spring is forcing down. That's going to give you the spring tension on your door. Insert the 2 bolts into the 2 holes on your retainer ring for your dust cover, and then we'll take the dust cover before we even install it, and we'll put it on those top 2 bolts. Now remember, orient that little cutout towards the bottom of where the actual sockets need to go, because that's where it's going to match up with that insert, as I showed you earlier, as acts as a drain in case any moisture would have gotten in there. Make sure everything's snugged up and tight, and that piece is all ready to go and be installed on the back side of the Jeep. I found it's easiest to make sure and line up the actual unit on the inside of the tub as such. Again, make sure your top is oriented so Warner is towards the top of the opening. Then we'll install the cap and the cover here with the 2 bolts, and then we can line everything up from the inside, and it should go right together now that we've double checked. You want to double check that your holes are in right order, because there's nothing worse than getting this all into your hands and then you realize it doesn't fit and you can't get the bolt to screw in. Before I install the rest of the bolts, I want to take this shorter one here, and I just want to show you how on the back side it's going to orient. Now we have our unit in, so this star washer is going to go on first, and that's going to touch the back side of the housing that we installed. Then there's going to be the lock washer, and then the nut. And the idea of this is you're going to tighten that down, and the lock washer is going to force that star washer into the metal panel and make a good ground. I'm going to show you right here. Now I've got the top 2 in already, and I've just got them hand tight, because I'm going to might have to make a little adjustments up or down so I can get those bottom bolts in, and to go around the back side of the front now, and the 3/4 inch long bolts go into the bottom holes. The longer ones are a little bit longer so they can hold the cap on. So we'll go ahead and install the bolt, then the star washer from the back side, then the standard lock washer, and then the nut. When you're putting the 2 3/4 inch long bolts in the bottom 2 holes, remember your dust shield is already in there, so you might have to work them through the rubber. Just turn them and twist them a little bit, and they'll go right into the holes, as everything at this point should be lined up. I'll be using a 7/16 socket and ratchet and a 7/16 box end open end wrench. When you're tightening these, you want to start on a top corner like this. Just get them snugged up, and you're going to work these back and forth the same way we did on the fiber disc it was in the beginning. You don't want to pull this too tight, as you will bend this actual ring. So we're going to go back and forth in an X pattern, and as soon as you feel those bolts get snug and bite into that metal, stop. You don't want to bend anything. Check to make sure your door is open, everything's okay. Now watch. I'm going to do something really special here. It's going to make this correct. Coupling socket assembly is part number A6586, and it's all installed. Next, I'm going to take a can of 33070 Ron Fitzpatrick Jeep parts, low luster, olive drab, and I'm going to spray a coat over the top of the whole thing. Now I'm going to leave the inside with the silver paint on it, and that would be how it would be from the factory in World War II. Take a look inside here. Everything's all tightened up. You can see the star washers are bitten in, but I've got this little teeny thing right here with this paint that's bothering me. I'm going to show you a little trick that maybe you know and maybe you don't. Take the cap off the spray can that you used, and you can spray on the side, and you'll get a little bit of the paint inside the top of the cup, and you can use it as a dish. Then you can take a brush and you can go in the inside of that and just touch up that little teeny spot that you didn't like or made you so upset. It's really not that big a deal. Make sure you brush everything out, because spray is a little bit different than with a brush. We can touch it all up, and now it looks fantastic. Very special thanks to Mr. TJ Zackman for the idea of painting that. That was not my idea. I kind of threw a line out there, and I've seen a lot of them painted OD green. I knew they were coated with something. They were coated with cadmium, CAD coated, and then they were sprayed over like that during World War II. So thank you, TJ, for the information. I really love the way that turned out. I think that's probably one of my favorite things that's on that Jeep out there. Now, somebody mentioned to me today there's a cover that goes over that, and I was like, there's no way, shape, and form that I'm going to put a cover after making that thing look the way it does. If you'd like to follow along what we're doing with the 1943 Willys MB, you can do so by subscribing down there to Team G503 on YouTube, and click that bell so you know the next time we release videos. All right, my friends, thanks for watching. Keep those trailer sockets grounded in the way they're supposed to go, and keep them looking pretty. Until next time, keep it safe. Happy Jeeping.